It is debated upon widely whether Canada has a national identity and what the identity is, if it even exists. It is unlikely that a consensus will ever be made about this, but perhaps this fact contributes to the argument of a Canadian nation, one where people are free to form their own opinions and will not be oppressed by law because of their differences. This describes the foundation of a civic nation. Our definition of Canadian nationalism is based on civic values. This national identity is less the idea that people are joined together because of a common belief in morals that are entrenched in law, but more the idea that Canada is a nation where everyone is protected and supported by a responsible, strong government. A government that does have laws entrenched in the Constitution, but more importantly, has laws that are fair and just, laws that show innovative ways of controlling a population rich with culture and knowledge. This government of this nation is so strong because the values of the population are reflected in their actions, due to the process of democracy. The government is void of manipulative political schemes and corruption, and as a result, the population displays faith in the capability of its leaders. Citizens will vote for the leader who most represents their values. Widely varying values, undoubtedly, but values that will be represented in the government elections in one way or another. Beliefs and values of a person, based on government or anything else, cannot and will not be discriminated against because all citizens reserve the right to free speech and free opinion. It is expected in this civic nation that people value the order and stability of the government, so much that the majority will participate in elections and actively showcase their opinions on both a personal and public scale. People of the nation are fully aware of the laws and rights protected in the Charter, as well as in the Constitution, and they trust the ability of the government to uphold these rules. The absence of ignorance about these rules means that citizens will not likely breach upon what is entrenched in law, and will suffer correct consequence if they do. The civic nation of Canada is more specifically based on knowledgeable citizens who possess incredible trust in the ethical and democratically appointed leaders of government. The national identity of Canada will inevitably change in the future, just as it has changed in the past. It is most likely that the national identity will change from one being based on law and government to being based more on multiculturalism. This is because of the immigration trends of recent years versus years before. Even now, when the main national identity of Canada is not one of multiculturalism, Canada's multicultural community is much more prominent than any other country, not necessarily based on the percent of immigrants living in Canada and contributing to its well-being as a country, although these statistics are impressive, but because of its immigration policies. The policies make it extremely difficult but also rewarding to immigrate into Canada. An extensive test must be taken in order to be admitted into the country as a valid immigrant, disallowing the possibility of illegal immigrants, and within this test an immigrant must apply under a certain category. Because Canada is a constantly growing and prospering country, no matter the volume of immigrants attempting to be accepted into Canada, there will always be a need for more capable workers, a characteristic that can be predicted by the immigration government through the category applied under and other results of the application test. It is also being recently discussed that perhaps because Canada is a country so interested in protecting human rights and allowing each person equal opportunity, no matter race or circumstance, the government should provide extra assistance to oppressed and poverty-stricken immigrants. If you think about it, this idea that our multicultural identity is based on the policies that our country supports for immigration shows that civics and good government is and will still be important in the future. Maybe our new national identity will be based on good government, civics, and inclusion.
During the 1860s, the British colonies of North America were in danger of being seized by the Americans, as well as in danger of hostile Fenians, who were an Irish-American militant group. After the American Civil War ended in 1865, many Americans believed that Canada should become part of America. Meanwhile, the Fenians were set on making a statement towards the British, who had control over Ireland. The Fenians believed that if they had control over Canada, it being a British state, the British would then relinquish control over Ireland. The act of forming Confederation was an action headed by John A. Macdonald and George Etienne Cartier as a defensive measure against the pressures from the Americans and the Fenians. Confederation was officially formed in 1867 and consisted of Upper and Lower Canada, whose names were then changed to Ontario and Quebec, as well as Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. This was the first major step in uniting the area and its various peoples into one nation of common interests and values that were to be entrenched in law. Having both a federal as well as regional governments allowed Quebec to uphold and promote its French culture and language.
A major part of the Constitution was the creation of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau enacted the Charter in 1982. It intended to protect certain political and civil rights of people in Canada from the policies and actions of all levels of government. Those rights are embodied in a set of principles that unify and protect all Canadians. The Charter contains principles from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and entrenches them in law. During the forming of the Constitution, Aboriginal people and their rights were also taken into account. Section 35 of the Constitution Act recognizes and affirms the existing Aboriginal and treaty rights in Canada. This protects the activities, practice, and traditions that are vital to the Aboriginal culture. Therefore, by protecting Aboriginal people's rights within the law, it makes them feel more included in Canada and helps unify our nation even more. The Constitution helped unify Canada civically in that it provided a set of laws and rights that every citizen is able to possess, no matter their language, race, or age. These laws that are shared by our country are what gives us those feelings of nationalism, belonging, and togetherness.
Robert Baldwin and Louis Lafontaine represented and affirmed the idea that the French and English could live and succeed together in harmony in the same nation. Lafontaine and Baldwin strove to unify the English and French as well as bring about the concept of a responsible government to Canada. Lafontaine and Baldwin, as well as many other reformers, were in power for just a year, but they made substantial contributions to Canada's government, all while showing that the two dominant and opposing language powers in Canada could work together, as the alliance between the two men was so strong. The goal of responsible government was not met in this time period, as the act of bringing about this way of running the country would take the majority of the power away from the government and place it in the hands of an executive council, with each respective member in control of its own province's affairs. This the governor rejected, of course. Lafontaine and Baldwin remained in Parliament as members of the opposition party following their loss of majority power. Lafontaine sought for French to be recognized as an official language of Parliament, and with his 1848 return to power he achieved this goal, thus unifying Canada through an act of law. Lafontaine also strove for compensation for property damaged or lost in the 1837 Lower Canada rebellions. These rebellions were a result of inadequate representation of the Francophone population in the aspects of daily life, such as banking and trade. This proposition sparked outrage among the Anglophones, especially when the bill was approved by the governor, but it was ultimately another tool for equality and unification within Canada.
Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister of Canada, ultimately from 1968 to 1984, elected as the Liberal Party leader. Pierre Trudeau is remembered as one of the most iconic and revolutionary leaders in Canada's history. This is because of his good-humored but daring approach to radically changing Canada's identity, as it was before his time in office. The issues that Trudeau is most known for supporting are the ones that are aiming to make Canada a more just society, meaning fair and equal. Famously, Pierre Trudeau once said in 1968 that he believed Canada will be a strong country when Canadians of all provinces feel at home in all parts of the country, and when they feel that all Canada belongs to them. We wish nothing more, but we will accept nothing less. Masters in our own house we must be, but our house is the whole of Canada. This speech that Trudeau made at the Liberal Leadership Convention is one that explicitly shows Trudeau's values and plans for Canada. The tone and use of language puts an emphasis on apparent strength of Canada as a nation. He used the word we and our, inclusive words that show he values equality and participation of all citizens. He brings a sense of ownership and pride to the Canadian reader who is led to believe through the speech that the triumphs of Canada as a country are the triumphs of Canadians as a nation. There were two programs that Trudeau fought for most during his time in office: universal healthcare and regional development programs. One of the biggest criticisms of Trudeau as a leader is that he did not follow through with his platform that all Canadians should be treated equal under law, and no Canadian deserves more opportunity than another. Pierre Trudeau also supported the bilingual and bicultural promotions of French Canadians attempting to develop more of an identity within Canada. Trudeau's critics were most likely citizens of wealthy families, ones who did not benefit from the policies he implemented. They did not share the same values as him, including equality of races or ethnicities and social classes, fairness under the law, and an unwavering sense of identity associated with the country of Canada.
Tommy Douglas was the CCF Premier and Minister of Health in Saskatchewan. He believed that healthcare should be free to all people. After being elected in July 1944, the Douglas CCF government began providing full funding for treatment of mental illness, STDs, and cancer. By January 1, 1945, government healthcare cards were issued by the CCF government to all pensioners, mothers on mothers allowance, and all disabled people in Saskatchewan. This gave them full Medicare coverage, including drugs. In 1945, a full Medicare program was introduced to the poorest region of Saskatchewan, providing each resident with full coverage for dental care for people up to the age of 16, medical services, and hospital care. This provided a model for the province-wide CCF Medicare plan. In 1946, comprehensive hospitalization coverage was granted to every resident of Saskatchewan. The goal of having all medically needed services provided to all residents of Saskatchewan could not be realized without the federal financial assistance. The Douglas government, in 1961, introduced legislation to implement full Medicare in Saskatchewan after Prime Minister John Diefenbaker agreed to fund 50% of the hospitalization costs on a province-by-province basis. In the fall of 1961, Tommy Douglas was called to lead the newly formed New Democratic Party in Parliament. Following the resolution of a 23-day doctor strike in July 1962, the Saskatchewan NDP and CCF government, under Premier Lloyd, finally brought in comprehensive Medicare for all residents of Saskatchewan. The Hall Commission report in 1964 laid the foundation for a national Medicare system founded on the principles of a universal, accessible, publicly administered system for all medically necessary treatment and care. In December 1966, the Parliament of Canada, including all members of the NDP under leader Tommy Douglas, passed the federal Medicare legislation that implemented full Medicare across Canada. The act became effective in 1968 and was fully implemented by all provinces in 1972. The fact that Canada has free healthcare nationwide is a big unifying factor for all Canadians. Our government is responsible for maintaining this healthcare system today. Without the strong force of our government, our healthcare system would be very different. Our government has worked to give us equal opportunities in relation to healthcare, and because of this, Canadians have a healthcare system that benefits us all and unites us into a stronger nation. Tommy Douglas was the founder of our healthcare system, and because of him, we have healthcare contributing to our sense of nationalism today.